A warm
Hi.
welcome and a hearty thank you for joining today's webcast sponsored by the Minnesota Gerontological Society, with a special welcome to our new listeners. Our recent work has focused on the challenges that have come to the forefront with the COVID-19 pandemic and the underlying social issues. And today's topic continues this direction. Our presenter today, Georgia Afton, will shed light on a topic that is of deep concern to many of us, particularly in this year, particularly at this time of year. It is entitled Elder Loneliness and Isolation, Fact, Fiction, or Epidemic. My name is Catherine Ringham, and I will be the moderator for today's webinar. To access the handouts, please go to the MGS website, then click the upcoming webinars box in the middle of the page. You will then be able to download a PDF of the slides for today's webinar and numerous excellent handouts. The phones, as always, are muted. If you have a question or a comment for our speaker, please type your question in the question box at the bottom of your screen or the question mark icon. Your voices matter in this conversation, so we encourage your involvement as we learn together from each other. Our free monthly webinars are made possible through the generosity of our sponsors, which are the Minnesota Board on Aging, the Senior Linkage Line, and the University of Minnesota Geriatrics Enhancement Workforce Program. And now we are very pleased to introduce our speaker that will illuminate the topic of isolation and loneliness in the senior population. Georgia Afton takes her professional work in elder service personally. She originally worked for her current employer, Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly, from 1999 to 2003 as the organization's development and communications director. To this day, she cherishes the memory of several elder friends made during those years who added joy, meaning, and wisdom to her life. Those friendships, coupled with navigating her own parents' elder years from overseas, drew her back to Little Brothers in 2015. She now serves as the organization's community outreach director and is happy to once again embrace the work of ending elder loneliness and isolation through the power of friendship. Georgia's previous nonprofit work has included communications and development roles with the Nonviolent Peace Force and Clare Housing. She earned a BA from the University of Minnesota and an MFA from Hamline University. We give a big hearty welcome to Georgia.
Thank you, everybody. It is great to be with you today, and really appreciate you joining us this afternoon. Thanks to the Minnesota Gerontological Society, and especially to Education Chair Catherine Hyder and Executive Director, Catherine Ringham, I apologize, Catherine Ringham, Education Chair, and Executive Director Tom Hyder for inviting Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly to be with you today. I just want to say thanks also to Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly, actually. It provides a brilliant reason to get up every morning, because the only reason the handful of us on staff come to work every morning is to bring people together in friendship. My presentation forecast for you today is that you will encounter some heavy cloud cover and hard rain, but sunshine and blue skies will also put in a strong appearance. And you may even spot a rainbow or two. So among the objectives we will tackle today are defining loneliness and isolation and their impact on older adult well-being and how we might minimize that. I really hope to invite curiosity about the importance of positive psychology and its capacity to equip older adults with self-agency over isolation and loneliness. We'll reflect on friendship as another powerful antidote in this regard. I will introduce some assessment tools, and we'll look at risk factors as well. And hopefully we'll energize your socks off and send you home happy and hopeful. And I would love to hear from anybody after the presentation. Oh, and I should say, I am not great at multitasking, so bear with me as I try to click and talk at the same time. It might be very entertaining. And just to forewarn you, there will be some music and audio or some music and video rather coming up, and we've had some technical difficulties there. So when cued, you may need to hum along. Okay, so with that, let's jump in and get started with a quick poll here. I know Catherine is going to manage the poll for us. So Catherine, when you are ready, I will ask the questions. Okay, I believe the poll is open now. So how do those you serve prefer to be called? Is it older adults, elderly, elders, seniors, or other? And we'll give you a few minutes to record your answers there. And Catherine will report back the results.
Okay, the results are in. It looks like 43% for the top one of older adults, just 3% for elderly. Elders came in at 8%, and seniors came in at 37%, and other at 9%. So kind of a mixed bag, but older adults is the big winner.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Very, very curious about that. And in addition, I just want to share that also out of curiosity, I would like to know how many people you serve and how many people you know, including yourself, want to be called friend. Elder loneliness and isolation is not just a phrase, it's intensely real. It affects real people, people with faces and hearts, with gifts to share and hopes and dreams to live. And unfortunately, elder loneliness and isolation is not some pie in the sky fiction. It is, in fact, epidemic. Pre-COVID, an earlier version of this presentation focused on that fact, but since COVID, the truth of elder loneliness and isolation has become so glaringly obvious that I won't actually spend much time pushing that point. Besides, there is no point singing to the choir, though here is an anthem to loneliness, which we hope you can hear, that you'll recognize. So even if you just pick up a bar of it, please hum along. So hopefully you caught that anthem to loneliness, the Beatles song Eleanor Rigby. So there were some of the heavy clouds and hard rain that I forecast. Elder loneliness and isolation, whoops, I'm popping to the next slide here. Elder loneliness and isolation will not magically disappear, but for a burst of sunshine here, the kindness of human friendship is a powerful antidote to loneliness and isolation. And if some of us haven't arrived there yet, we are, after all hopefully older adults in training. So let me ask you this. At the end of the day, what will you remember most? Is it where you lived or the people you lived with? Is it the status you achieved, the house you lived in, the car you drove, or is it the relationships you had? So up next, let's look at the power of random acts of friendship. And in a time of COVID, what friendship can look like. Okay, lights, camera, action, and hopefully you can hear the soundtrack. So hopefully you caught the soundtrack there, but even if all you got was the visual, you couldn't possibly have missed the rainbow moment of this act of friendship. I love the call to action that appeared on the screen at the end. Take the time to check in with those around you. You never know the difference it could make. Let's take that action and make it our own. What do you say? Okay, so up next, Lasting Friendship at Your Fingertips from Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly. If you serve elders or older adults who you're concerned about vis-a-vis loneliness and isolation, LBFE has a couple of programs you may find helpful. In response to COVID-19, which knocked out our in-person visiting programs, we created Elder Friends Phone Companions, through which we pair lonely people over 65 with volunteer phone companions as part of our forever friendship commitment that we make to the older adults we serve. Referring folks is simple. You can do it online, by phone, or through our website or email. And we welcome volunteers age 18 to 100 plus. And coming soon, we are currently in the test phase of a program we are calling Coffee Talk. And this is a volunteer-operated inbound chat line for older adults, currently in the test phase, as I mentioned. And it offers people an opportunity to connect one-on-one for friendly chats without committing to the longer-term relationship our phone companion programs offer. And when we launch with that, no referral will be necessary. You'll just be able to give your older adults the phone number. So never let your friends feel lonely. Disturb them all the time. Speaking as an introvert, I would find the all the time part of this pretty disturbing, but why is this cartoon not only funny, but also poignant? In the words of British poet John Donne, "No man is an island entire of itself. We are all social beings." Feeling of alienation that shows up as social hurt that either motivates us to seek connection or engenders a sense of being unwanted that causes us to withdraw and fall into social, or spiral, I should say, of social isolation, which is the total or near total lack of connection with community. Loneliness takes hold when the family and friendship ties we have don't match our social reality. Decline in social connections as we age means loneliness can be hardest to overcome later in life. So what is this woman feeling now in the midst of loneliness and isolation? She's feeling anxious, hopeless, bored, misunderstood, abandoned, afraid, inconsequential, helpless, empty, and tired. Such feelings create a downward spiral deeper into loneliness. Perhaps she's lost a loved one or a job or both, leading to negative thoughts and feelings which in turn influence behavior. And next comes withdrawal from activity, leading to deeper thoughts of loneliness and more despair, which leads to further withdrawal, and which in turn increases the severity of the loneliness felt. And if you add to this spiral of loneliness and isolation the fraying of social ties, we in fact enter full-blown isolation. And we know that full-blown isolation leads to a circle of loss. So we see a withdrawal from relationships, an impact on our physical decline, disconnection from our environment, and it dampens our hopes and dreams and aspirations around the things we want to achieve. It breaks our hearts and our spirits and undercuts our belief in our ability to have agency over our own lives. Did I mention there will be hard rain? Well, it's falling from a low, bruised Irish sky right about here. So let's go ahead and take another poll. If I could call on you again, Catherine, please. Okay, so the poll is open. And in this poll, we're going to ask you, which of these states of being do you most frequently see among those you serve? Is it solitude, being alone without feeling lonely? Is it loneliness? Is it isolation? Or is it connection? So over to you to come up with your answers. And Catherine will share the results.
And the results are, it looks like there's kind of a tie between loneliness at 42% and isolation at 43%, with solitude being at 7% and connection also matching that at 7% as well. So those are the results.
Wow, I was really, really curious to see where those results would land us. That is fascinating, isn't it? That loneliness and isolation are way, way ahead of solitude and connection. So we have our work cut out for us, don't we? So to that end, let's consider social isolation in terms of something that is measurable. And it is measurable in factors such as, in terms of factors rather, such as the size of one's social network, personal mobility, availability of transportation, and access to community. So let's also ask ourselves about loneliness and social isolation in terms of assessment. Now, I know that there are smarter heads in the room today that could speak more effectively on measuring and assessing loneliness and isolation than I can. But this first link I want to share with you, Loneliness Tools Measurement Guidance. This is a really great tool, and it's out of England. And what it does is it sets up an analysis and comparison of some really popular assessment and measurement tools. The first is the Campaign to End Loneliness measurement tool, which is 3 questions and comes out of England. The second is the De Jong Loneliness Scale, which is 6 questions. And the UCLA Loneliness Scale, which is 3 questions. And I would also like to add the AARP Foundation's Connect to Affect, How Connected Are You, which I believe is a really great assessment tool as well. And you do have links to these items in your handouts for certain. So the next couple of slides, we will cover isolation risk factors. And I won't read all of these. I'll just pop them on the screen and highlight a few. I'll pop them all on the screen first for you. So the ones I'd like to draw your attention to, living alone or living in a rural location. That second one there, otherization, the systematic racism, or belonging to an ethnic minority, or the LGBTQIAP community, or other culturally marginalized groups of human beings. Social disparity is another one that comes to mind, along with inadequate access to healthcare. And this last one, living in a culture with a liability, loss-focused attitude toward aging rather than a gain asset mindset or lens. So next, it's time to get your brains into gear here again with a quiz. Let's think about the impact of elder loneliness and isolation and have this fact or fiction quiz. So what's going to happen here is I am going to make a statement, and unfortunately we won't be doing this in poll fashion, so you'll just have to write it down and shout it out to yourself in your living room. But I will also give you the answers after each statement. So here we go. The first statement is, Psychology Today reports that 26% of adults face increased risk of early death due to subjective feelings of loneliness. Is that true or is it false? Next up, lonely people have a 32 I'm sorry, I don't know if I said whether it was true or not. That is in fact true, that first one. So sorry, moving to the second one then. Lonely people have a 32% increased risk of developing dementia. Is that true or false? Well, it is in fact false, because lonely people have a 64% increased risk of developing dementia. And finally, according to the AARP Public Policy Institute, Medicare currently spends $2.7 billion a year to treat isolated elder citizens. What do you think? Is that one true or is it false? Well, my friends, it is in fact false, because Medicare currently spends $6.7 billion a year to treat isolated elder citizens. And just think, if those citizens were surrounded by friends and family, how much this bill of $6.7 billion would go down. Okay, so time for a big burst of sunshine. Oh no, I'm sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself here, I apologize. I do want to just pause here and ask, when does loneliness risk becoming isolation? If one views loneliness through a lens that perpetuates beliefs such as, I have no purpose, no one needs me, no one wants me, I deserve to be lonely, it's my own fault, I can't share my feelings of loneliness with anyone, loneliness is just an innate part of who I am, loneliness is a foregone conclusion as I age, all my best years are behind me. Societal stereotypes ridiculing and synonymizing growing older with loneliness are not fake news. I beg to differ with that one very strongly. So finding the inner agency to paddle upstream against such beliefs and turn the loneliness tide is challenging. But here's your burst of sunshine. Elder loneliness and isolation busters are out there, and I know that I am talking to many, many of you right now. So growing older does not have to equal growing lonelier. So where do we start? If we are to understand loneliness, if we are to challenge its stigma, and if we are to relieve its pain, we must not overlook the psychological and emotional forces at play and focus only on the socioeconomic and socio-structural influences that also impact loneliness. So it's going to take a whole community. It's going to take population-wide awareness building. Thank you, Governor Walz, and to everyone who is working on an age-friendly Minnesota. It will take the incorporation of emotional and psychological loneliness relief tools into services for older people. Thank you for all the fine work that so many of you out there are already doing in this particular arena. Overcoming loneliness and isolation also takes one-on-one kindness and attentive care for older people with chronic loneliness delivered by family, if they're lucky enough to have family, by trained staff, practitioners, by peers, by trained volunteers. So a huge thank you to all the wonderful frontline staff, especially during COVID, who have put themselves on the line. And I know that those of you who are in these frontline positions can't hear the round of applause that you are getting right now, but believe me, it is real, and we take our hats off to you. And I do want to say how incredibly important volunteers are. And in mentioning volunteers, I would just like to recognize our very own Norm Morris, who won the Excellence in Volunteering Award for the state of Minnesota last year. One group I haven't mentioned yet, that is right at the pinnacle here, is Friends, Friends, Friends. And something else we need to be absolutely essential to include this community-wide effort are the voices of our older adults themselves. At every level, those with the most at stake, our older adults, we need their voices, their input, their ownership, and their sense of purpose and guidance is just absolutely paramount to the fight against loneliness and isolation. Now, here's something else. Intensity of the support needed for the particular person who is lonely intensifies and correlates to the severity of the loneliness. So at the apex of the triangle there, if we had the most lonely elders, we also have at the very apex of the triangle there, helping them out, our friends. And I cannot stress that enough. I suppose it's because I'm so passionate about what we do at Little Brothers, Friends of the Elderly, and how much I've witnessed the beauty of the friendships we curate, making difference in our elders' lives. It's just absolutely amazing. So if we are all to play our part, what is yours and what is ours? Fostering anti-loneliness environments is something that we can all contribute to. We can, for example, adopt the PERMA framework at all levels in our support of older adults. In your strategic and program planning and execution, create space for positive emotions, engagement in satisfying tasks, relationships, communicating positively with other people, meaning and sense of purpose in life, along with achievement, setting and attaining meaningful goals. So let's look at some steps toward building loneliness resilience. Practice gratitude. Be active. Take notice. Keep learning. Give to others. Connect. So what is she feeling now? She is feeling confident, hopeful, involved, understood, connected, brave, valued, She's feeling that she's enough. She's feeling complete. She's feeling alive. And she is feeling powerful. And I want to get some older adult voices in the room here, because they are, after all, the experts. So these are testimonials taken from a group of older adults who participated in a group that had this focus on positive psychology. And here's what they had to say. I just keep my husband's photo there, and every morning I ask him, I'm going to do that. Do you agree with me? I myself decide what to do, but actually he helps me. That's from the bereaved widow. We can say to one another, I had a bad day yesterday. That's from the gentleman who suffers from depression. If you've got a purpose, it will keep you going. Knitting something for somebody, that's purpose and it helps. That's from the woman who cultivates purpose and giving to others. I do a few exercises, shower, and I walk to get the paper, and I feel fine, you know. But I think if I got up and didn't, I wouldn't. That's from the man who gets up, gets out, and gets on every day. So let's consider what putting all these positive psychological tools to work in our lives and in the lives and older adults adopting them in their lives. Let's take a look at how that creates an upward spiral out of loneliness. So first of all comes awareness that thoughts and feelings related to loneliness influence behavior. Second, recognition that unchallenged negative thoughts and feelings lead to behavior patterns that are hard to shift. That's owning it, right, folks? And third, knowing negative patterns can be changed with the practice of positive psychology. And fourth, that practice in positive psychology leads to a shift toward positive thinking, which in turn leads to behavior change. And six, it leads to increased engagement, which diminishes feelings of loneliness. So what I have for you as we draw to a close here with the presentation is a call to action. And actually, I call it heart work. And I, in fact, have two calls to action for you. So please take out a few Post-it notes or something to write on. And here comes call to action number one. So what are you already using, or what can you take from positive psychology you've been exposed to today to reinforce your ability to take a bite out of older adult loneliness and isolation? Okay, you got that? All right, so call to action number two, I'd like you to think about jotting down 3 or 4 qualities of friendship someone is or has extended to you recently. And this weekend, give them a call and practice gratitude. So that's it for the call to action, folks. So I do want to point out that there are some bonus slides at the end of the presentation or the end of the slideshow. Slides 39 to 42 cover the AARP isolation assessment tool, which I mentioned earlier. How connected is the older adult you know? It's a really, really great tool. And in addition to that, slides 43 to 45 look at the fact that causes of social isolation are cumulative and solutions depend on relationship building initiatives. So, so with that, I want to say a very big thank you so much for being here and for the great work that you do on behalf of older adults. I also want to thank Catherine Ringham again and Tom Hyder and the Minnesota Gerontological Society for putting on this presentation today. I also want to mention that if it would be helpful, we would be very happy to give this presentation again to any of your colleagues, your staff, or groups you think that would benefit from it. And certainly, please, if you know older adults who could benefit from our phone companion program or from our soon-to-be coffee talk program, please contact us. And finally, I want to say thank you for being a friend, and I really hope that you can hear the music that goes with this. If you can't hear it, it is the Golden Girls. Thank you for being a friend. So I really hope that you could hear the Golden Girls belting out, thank you for being a friend. And it is the last thing I want to leave you with. And just be happy that I did not attempt to sing along there. So I do just want to say, finally here, I wanted to show you that at the end of the presentation here and in your handouts, you will find links to all of the sources and resources that were used to put this presentation together. And with that, I am going to hand it over to you and to Catherine and see if there are any questions that I can hopefully answer.
Thank you, Georgia. You did a great job, and I just feel a need to apologize a little bit for the technical audio difficulties we had with those beautiful songs, not only to our audience, but to you as well, who so carefully and thoughtfully put that together in a more animated format. But for those who are who still have some nagging questions or need clarification, again, please type your questions or comments in the question box at the bottom of your screen or the question mark icon, because our goal at this point is to have a lively discussion. And we can start off with a comment from Todd, who said that he could tell that the pandemic had a sizable effect on the loneliness of older adults, especially from the anecdotal evidence from his Get Out the Vote phone calls this fall, where a higher than usual percentage of the conversations were 3+ minutes. And many that the conversation, that he could tell they didn't want to end the conversation.
Yes, that is such a great observation, Todd, and it's certainly something that we at Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly witnessed as well, especially when we had to put our in-person visiting program on hold. But then once we got up and running with the phone companion program, our older adults got really excited, and we had a wonderful outpouring of volunteer support from the community.
Excellent. There's a couple questions, Georgia, about the coffee talk service. Number one was, when might it roll out? And number two is there a minimum age requirement to participate?
Those are great questions. Thank you very much for asking them. So as I mentioned, we are currently in the test phase of a pilot phase, and we hope to actually roll out in early 2021, possibly even as early as January. And we will certainly do a big splash to let you know all about it. When it does hit, you will hear from us, that's for sure. And at that point, we invite you to share the Coffee Talk number with any folks over 65 who you think would benefit from a friendly chat. We on staff have been so lucky because we've been actually testing it with a couple of our great elder serving partners, and it has been amazing. I got to chat with a woman the other day, and I cannot tell you, she just absolutely lit my heart on fire. So we're really, really excited about this program.
That's great. Georgia, a couple people wanted to know about the volunteer component. Is your training something that is shareable? And have you ever found elder abuse, stealing from a vulnerable, since the population is vulnerable, any issues with volunteers in that vein?
That is another excellent question. And the first thing I would say is that all of our volunteers are screened and background checked. So fortunately, we have not run into those nefarious issues, very thankfully. As to training, pre-COVID, we did an in-person training, and now in the midst of COVID, we're actually rolling out a series of conversations with Little Brothers, Friends of the Elderly, and one of them features Norm Morris, who I mentioned earlier, our award winner and just a rock star volunteer. He and I have recently recorded a training that focuses on the challenges of being a phone volunteer and the challenges really of the phone conversation, because it relies on voice alone to communicate emotion and feeling and meaning. And of course, if you're in person, that is easier because our body language says so much.
Thank you for your good answers here. Eric wanted to know if you were aware or heard of this Cycling Without Age program. We're starting this program to overcome just these issues in Walworth County in Wisconsin.
I am so glad to hear that. I was not aware, but thank you for making us all aware here today. And I would love to touch base with you on the other side of this presentation. And you'll notice on the screen right now, both my email address and my phone number.
Good. Georgia, we had a request if you could go back to the spiral, the upward spiral slide. Sure. So someone could get a deeper look at that as well. And then I want to remind our audience that to get the PDF of the slides and a lot of good handouts, just go to the MGS website and be directed to the webinar site, and you can find those today.
And again, if anybody wants to reach out to me, I'm also happy to get this, slide to them as well.
Great, yeah. Is a resident able to request a specific volunteer through Friends of the Elderly? Say a resident would be interested in the phone program, but wants to be sure to have someone who's older like herself, who may be on the same wavelength.
Another absolutely brilliant question. And the answer is yes. We have a fabulous colleague on staff, Sandy O'Donnell. She is our elder advocate. She has been with the organization for almost 25 years. And she is, I cannot tell you how passionate she is about matching our elders with volunteers who have that copacetic base, if you like. And funnily enough, just recently we did actually get an older adult in the Phone Companion program who did specifically request the fact that she also wanted to be paired with another older adult who had the same life experience as she does. So yes, we're very, very mindful of that.
Good, good. That's good to know. Okay, let's see. From June, she asked a good question. How do you work with lonely elders who are in a relationship, living with a partner, but yet are still very lonely because of a lack of connection? So again, yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, Catherine. Yes, that's a very, very poignant question. And yeah, I think back to a pre-COVID experience that we had as a staff in Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly. You know, the vast majority of the older adults we serve are not married, but occasionally they are. And we had this absolutely wonderful, wonderfully kind-hearted, genuine, gentle, bright spark of an older adult woman in our program who was married to a verbally abusive husband who was not nice to her at all. And the visiting companion we matched her with was such a lifeline for her in terms of her emotional well-being. And it's both very distressing to see that, but it's also very rewarding and very heartening to see the difference volunteers can make and friends can make in such situations.
Georgia, we had a couple of questions over what is the service area for Little Brothers, and also has this been replicated anywhere, other phone type programs?
Thank you for asking that question, because I did want to mention the fact that you know, Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly has been around in the Twin Cities since 1972. In fact, we were founded in 1946 in Paris, of all places. And today the organization serves over 55,000 elders worldwide in 10 countries. And here in the States, we are in 6 cities. So in terms of replication, each chapter works pretty independently, and we, because each of us is responding to a different community, right? So for us, this program, I cannot tell you how hard our small staff worked to pull together Elder Friends Phone Companions, and we hired a wonderful young woman, Caitlin Enright, who used to be an intern with us, but for the last year, she has been the brains and the will behind researching and developing the Coffee Talk program. And by the way, her contract with us is ending and she will be looking for a job. So I'm going to throw out a plug for Caitlin Enright. She is amazing. And any of you who are hiring would be so lucky to have her.
Excellent. John asked, how does depression fit into the loneliness isolation dynamic?
You know, that's a really, really good question. And as somebody who suffers from depression myself, I think what I'd like to do with that is, I'm just going to go back to this slide right here. And what we know is people who are depressed, if we, you know, and depression it's such a hard thing, because at some level, you know, all the Prozac in the world isn't going to make a difference. The best psychiatrist, the best therapist, the best friends aren't going to make a difference unless we, the depressed person, take some baby steps. We don't have to take them alone, but we do have to take them. And certainly in my own experience, and I think I've certainly heard older adults who are members of the Little Brothers Friends of the Elderly community have spoken about the power of practicing gratitude. Being active, we know that you hear it all the time, that getting out for a walk in the fresh air really enhances serotonin uptake. So exercise changes our brain chemistry and is a really important ingredient to overcoming depression. And in addition, whoops, I'm going the wrong way here, I'm sorry. In addition to that, I really like this one of taking notice, and what this one puts in mind for me is a lot of people find, including myself, tremendous relief from depression if we take notice. And for me, that means meditating, but it also means, you know, if I'm really depressed and I'm out for a walk and I'm looking at my feet and, you know, looking at my black shoes, if I look up and take notice of the beauty of the fall colors or the beauty of the blue sky, that really helps me. And another ingredient that we can take as a step to overcoming depression is keep learning. This is a funny thing, actually. Well, it's not funny, but just at the end of October, I lost my only sister to cancer. She lived overseas. And working on this project to do this presentation, I learned a lot. And that learning experience really helped me to step out of that very desolate place that I was in the wake of my sister's death. I'm going the wrong way. Okay, and I think the giving to others connects with the practicing gratitude. I know that if I light up somebody else's day, it makes me feel better in my own heart. And there, right at the very top of the steps, we have connecting. I know when I am suffering from depression, all I want to do is pull the covers up over my head and disappear. But if I make the effort to connect and reach out, then I am rewarded with these wonderful feelings ultimately. But it takes a village. It takes a whole community. So thank you very much for that thoughtful question.
And I think we're going to end with a question about, do you have any quick tips for talking to a senior who might be lonely or certainly isolated in these stay-at-home times, in terms of hearing loss or in terms of just things to not forget to put into the conversation?
Yes, that's another fantastic question. Thank you. And whoever asked that question, I hope that you will have an opportunity to tune into the conversation that I mentioned, the training series, the conversation that Norm, our volunteer, and I have about challenging conversations. Pre-COVID, I would have said, if you are interacting with an older adult who is hard of hearing or perhaps has vision issues, it's important to face them, ask permission to come closer, and also speak at a very moderated pace, and ask the elder as well. They will definitely let you know if you ask them. They'll be more than happy to let you know what you can do to help to help with the interaction, involve them, make them part of the equation.
Thank you so much. And Georgia has been very open to people following up with her. For any of the questions that did not get answered today, feel free to contact her. Maybe you could put your
I will.
Yeah, Georgia, as we finish up. Yeah.
Give me 1 second and I'll get right there.
Okay.
Yeah,
And
so
then,
feel free to take a photograph of this slide here with my contact information on. I would absolutely love to hear from you. And as I mentioned earlier, be very happy to give this presentation to folks that you work with or other groups that you think would benefit from it.
thank you so much. So any final remarks?
I just want to say how inspiring it is to be part of a community that really takes this issue of older adult isolation and loneliness so seriously. Again, thank you to Governor Walz and everyone who has invested in making Minnesota an age-friendly state, and to all the work that frontline staff are doing and researchers are doing, and that the Minnesota Gerontological Society is doing, that the Minnesota Council on Aging is doing. It's really it's time for us all to pull together and really take a bite out of older adult loneliness and isolation. So thank you all for the fabulous work you are doing, and thank you for having me here today.
Well, thank you so much. And I really appreciate the focus on the solutions as well as outlining the issue. So we want to
I promised you to be some bursts of sunshine, right? Along with the hard rain.
Received. Thank you. We also want to give a big thanks to our listening audience for your participation, your questions, and your comments today. We are so grateful to Georgia for sharing her expertise and her experiences as we pause and reflect on an issue that reaches into the very heart of our work with seniors. So in closing, here are a few things to remember. First of all, the CEU certificates of attendance are available for today's webinar. They're free for members of MGS and $15 for non-members. This is a self-submit certificate and has been pre-approved by the Board of Social Work. MGS is also listed as a continuing education resource by the Minnesota Board on Nursing. So the CEU for today and recordings of past webinars can be downloaded immediately after the presentation on the MGS website. Just go to the webinar archives and the CEU section. Secondly, you will receive a follow-up email with instructions on how to access and download the CEU, as well as an evaluation survey that'll pop up when you exit, and it also will be emailed to you later today, because your feedback and suggestions for future programs is greatly appreciated. We also want to encourage you to consider joining MGS. The membership benefits and application are available on the website. An annual membership is only $75, which includes CEUs for future and all past webinars will then be free to you. And we'd like you to mark your calendars for our next webinar, which will be on January 12th, always at noon, from the Alzheimer's Association volunteer community educator, Betsy Benz. She will speak on the topic of effective communication strategies, decoding and responding to verbal and behavioral messages. You will not want to miss it. And also coming up next year, the MGS will be hosting its 45th annual conference on April 29 and 30th. This will have a pre-conference on April 28th focused on research. So this two-day interactive e-learning experience is entitled Aging in Minnesota, Forging a New Narrative. So watch for more updates as we enter the new year. As always, we thank you for choosing to spend part of your day with us. Thank you.